too. So, my joke is that I don't really do Mercury retrograde, but sometimes Mercury retrograde does me. So hopefully everybody can hear me now. But let's start over again. Is it still no sound? It should be sound right now. But for those that cannot hear me, let me know. But every week we gather live to look at the astrology. You hear me say it every week. The astrology is 50% and you are the other 50%. So if we still do not have sound, or if we do have sound, let me know, because I will need to adjust. So maybe I will just finish and we're all good. We're all good. Take 3. So yes, I'm back. So it's been a couple of weeks. I was in Greece. I had an event, I had a conference, and that lasted a week, and then I drove around a little bit, and here we are. And that flight back from Greece is 11 hours. So it's a very long flight. But just to say it again, because we may or may not had sounds, for those that watch me every week, not the last 2 weeks, you hear me say it every week, the astrology is 50%. You are the other 50%. So we have some catching up to do. Namely, I think I can't remember if this got cut off because I hit the microphone as I was setting everything up. This lunar month, and this is a lunar month that began 2 weeks ago. This was on July 24th. And this lunar month, any lunar month, it sets the stage. It gives us a 4-week period where our lives are set on the stage of the energies of that new moon. And particularly depending on what sign we are, what we have in our own astrology, it might be a really important lunar month. What I remember talking about 2 weeks ago is that this lunar month that we had, which we're still in, it was exactly opposite Pluto in Aquarius. So Pluto is a big factor, not just the past 2 weeks, but even the next couple of weeks, and even particularly this week because Mercury is now direct, hence my microphone. But before I dive in, just let everybody know who I am. My name is Katie Sweetman, and I'm located here in the rolling hills of Central Maryland. And I see some familiar faces. And if you are watching live, as always, let me know where you're watching from. It's always fun to check in. And I know it's, at least here in the Northern Hemisphere, it's vacation season. And as I was saying, perhaps with the mic not on, it's really hard to try to record these things in advance and do everything that I need to do. And sometimes a gal needs a break. So let's just dive in. So let's rewind 2 weeks. Let's go back to July 24th. As I was saying earlier, that a new moon sets the stage for the next 4 weeks. And we are still in the energies of this new moon, although we have just, as of Saturday, the 13th, we have had the 9th, we have had a full moon in Aquarius. So this new moon with this opposition to Pluto means that throughout the course of 4 weeks, we're really working with the energies of Pluto. What's Pluto? Well, each planet in the astrology, it performs a role, it performs a critical role. The sun represents you. This is why we have Leo season. You might not be a Leo, but you still have sun. Your sun just might be in Gemini or Scorpio or Sagittarius, for example. Pluto, on the other hand, if the sun is the self, then Pluto is what's called an evolutionary planet. It demands transformation. Yes, demands transformation. And it says that something is really demanding of us over a 4-week period to transform. So how are you feeling this? You're like, I have no idea what you're talking about, Katie, or I have absolutely 100% every idea what you're talking about. Because Pluto oppositions can be confrontational. They can pull things out that we previously have not seen. They can get uncomfortable. And I wanted to highlight that because one of the functions of this lunar month is that we've had Mercury retrograde up until this morning sometime. I think it was in the middle of the night. But with Mercury now direct, it has pivoted opposite Pluto. So Mercury is going to pretty much hang out opposite Pluto all week long. It's not a very comfortable place for Mercury to be. because Mercury in general is how we speak, how we listen, how we communicate, the choices that we make, our ability to weigh our options, our need to move, our need for curiosity. And even though my mic was not working, you should know that I'm not that astrologer that typically likes to blame Mercury retrograde, because I think by and large we have Mercury retrograde wrong. Every planet turns retrograde. More particularly with Mercury, it does it the most frequently, but Mercury, any planet that turns retrograde, it's like a yin phase. It's a time to reflect, to go back, to tie up loose ends. And I know I see a lot of memes about how everybody, feeling like they're punished by Mercury retrograde. But the idea is that Mercury retrograde gives us time to catch our breath, to go back and to perhaps look at things from a different point of view. Maybe even, because it's a yin phase, receptive energy, to use our intuition. That's the thing about Mercury. We are so in the mind, in the head, whether it's the active state of Mercury, Gemini, we are just, all days on our phones, we're just scrolling through information, or even Virgo as the other ruler of Mercury. It's critical thinking, it's analysis, but that's still the head. And a Mercury retrograde says, wait a second, don't forget about the intuition. Don't forget to trust your gut. Go back, rewind. Something that maybe you were too busy scrolling through your phone. I'm a human too. I'm guilty of that. Maybe there's something that we need to go back to. For example, with Mercury retrograde in Leo, there's something around this whole period over the last 3 weeks that's been about self and identity, how you communicate, how you think, how you listen, how you learn. And with Mercury in this, like I said, a little bit of an uncomfortable opposition to Pluto, Pluto is saying to Mercury, you need to think differently, choose differently, communicate differently. And maybe you've had some conversations in the past couple of days that have been a little bit uncomfortable, or I don't know, maybe it's not the case for you. Or maybe you're really, that's the thing, Mercury and Pluto can sometimes obsess, like sort of really go around the same point over and over again. But the idea isn't to obsess to no end. It's to ultimately take a decision to do something differently. Again, to communicate differently, to make different choices, and to perhaps to go in a different direction. Like I said earlier, Leo is very personal. It's about, the I, the self, creativity, talents, gifts, and abilities. But Leo's also about identity. Who are you? Who am I? Who are any of us? And that's a really important that, especially as Pluto tries to pull things that have been out of the way. Maybe you haven't said something and you really needed to say something, and Pluto's sort of saying to you, look, you need to say this, it's important. So I wanted to say that because we're really feeling that all week long, because it's not until perhaps next week that Mercury pulls away more from the opposition to Pluto. And the Mercury retrograde, forward and direct process typically means that Mercury will be in a sign for 2 months. So we still have some time before Mercury gets into Virgo. We're still looking back at our choices, reflecting on the past few weeks, and perhaps making different choices, for example. So Mercury is now direct. Like I said, a couple of days ago, we had an Aquarius full moon, and that any full moon really punctuates, it puts something into the spotlight that is within this sort of greater theme of the lunar month. And I wanted to go back to that full moon a couple of days ago because it has Mars opposite Saturn. I know, Mercury opposite Pluto, Mars opposite Saturn. An opposition, for those that don't know, it just means two planets are on either ends of the sky from one another. They're important, and specifically Mars opposite Saturn from a classical standpoint is very important. Mars and Saturn are planets that you want to watch. Saturn is our capital P priorities at any point in time, but Mars is also our immediacy. Like, what are our immediate priorities? And we're sort of getting caught in a back and forth between sort of bigger priorities, especially with Saturn now in Aries, at least for the next few weeks, and these sort of new themes that are beginning to come up on the horizon. and also the immediacy of Mars now in Libra as of August 6th. So we now have Mars in Libra. It'll be in Libra until I think the 22nd of September. So our immediate priority is now Libra relationships. And I think that's going to be something that really colors our experience this week around Mercury opposite Pluto, around conversations, around things coming up and things perhaps hidden coming to light. Some of that may also be involved with relationships. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that we are about 1 month away from our first eclipse in a pair of eclipses that will mark September. So yes, we are on the verge of eclipse season, and perhaps you all know at this point how much I academically love, not necessarily personally love, but academically love eclipses. They're super fascinating. They happen every 6 months like clockwork, and they say that that month, give or take, is going to be a pivot point, and for some people a time of significant change. I know that's a big statement, but eclipses really mark the story arc of our lives. They are there for our marriages, for our births, for our career changes, for the other big moments in our lives. And for those who are Virgo or Pisces and or have strong placements in Virgo Pisces, this is a pivot point for you in particular. It's when I sit down and I look at the astrology for the year, I'm like, where are the eclipses? Those are going to be my big months, those months that I really need to pay attention to as an astrologer. Where's Mars and Saturn? That's my other thing that I'm looking at. But we're also, as we get into next week, we're coming up to a new moon that I've had my eye on since the beginning of the year, and that's the August 23rd Virgo new moon at 0 degrees. We actually have 2 Virgo new moons this year. That's not common, but this new moon is at 0 degrees of Virgo, as I said, but it's square Uranus. So we've got a lot more things to talk about over the next week, and how August and the end of August, more particularly September, is just a month that I have a lot of question marks about, because there's a lot of things moving and shifting. You may be moving, you may be shifting. But when we go through each of the 12 zodiac signs, really sort of situate ourselves in what's beginning to come up on the horizon. All in all, it's a bit of a quote unquote quiet week. Not a lot of big aspects, just sort of the lingering effects of Mercury opposite Pluto, as I mentioned. And as we get to the middle of the week, we also have an Aries moon picking up on Mars opposite Saturn. So really your Tuesday, your Wednesday, later today, Tuesday and Wednesday, Mars opposite Saturn says we need to really take things seriously, put things in order, make plans for the future, and take the next step up in whatever we are working towards in our lives. We also do have Venus conjunct Jupiter this week. I know there's a lot of fanfare when people see that Venus and Jupiter are going to be conjunct. It happens once a year. It's a beautiful aspect in terms of Jupiter is in its exaltation in Cancer, and it just says that anytime there's a conjunction, it's a time to plant new seeds. It doesn't mean that we necessarily see right away what those new seeds are planting. Are growing rather, and these new seeds are going to be around family, home, connection, past and memories, but in a positive way, the way that past and memory can support something going forward. Jupiter and Cancer, it really leans on putting down roots and really feeling a sense of emotional connection and stability. So like I said, it's Tuesdays when the conjunction is. I think it's at 12 degrees of Cancer, 14 degrees of Cancer. But it says that these are seeds that maybe we need to get a little bit of time to see what they're growing. So you can use this energy with intention to really think about the home life that you want to create, the type of family situation you want to create, the positive aspects, especially if perhaps in the past it's been anything but. So, and as we go into next week, we will definitely talk about that new moon that I have my eye on the 23rd. We also have Virgo season next week. So there you go. So that's your look at the astrology of this week. Like I said, no big aspects happening this week, but let's look at each of the 12 zodiac signs, starting with Aries. Aries, so I'm catching you a few days after Mars opposite Saturn. So it's just a little check-in. How are you doing? Because Mars is your planet. As of August 6th, Mars is now in Libra. Libra is your sign of relationships. It's both your intimate relationships, but in general, how do you connect, interact, and socialize with other people? When Mars is in this space, it can put you, depending on who you are and the circumstances of what's going on in your life right now, it can sometimes put you on the defensive. It's about other people or relationship are the priority right now. Interestingly enough, you also now have Saturn, at least until September 1st, in Aries. It's been there since not March 29th, it's been there since May 24th. And this is a big back and forth in your chart. It's really putting the spotlight on relationships. It's about you. It's about these new beginnings. It's about responsibility. It's about pivot points. And it may bring up a lot of things. Sometimes Mars and Saturn are not easy planets. They're typically the heavy hitters in the zodiac. So you're in a little bit of a pinch point this week. My philosophy with Saturn is always take the step up, always reach towards your goals, show up on time, be above board, because that's when things typically will work out with the Mars and Saturn. But it could be a shift point for you this week. Look towards Tuesday and Wednesday with the moon in Aries to really heat things up a little bit, especially in terms of relationships. Also, we just have Mercury turn direct. It turned direct in Leo, your fifth sign of self-expression, creativity, identity. It's in a little bit of that little bit. It's in opposition to Pluto, so there's something that sort of adds to a bit of a back and forth right now. It's just not particularly easy astrology for my Aries risings, but let's see how when we get to next week and beyond, how things begin to shake out. Saturn in general is a point of stability in your life right now, at least until the end of the month, the end of the month. But again, it's asking you to stand on your own 2 feet, to be the mature one, for example. And there you go. Taurus. So Venus is your planet, and Venus is in Cancer. Cancer is something called your third sign, voice, communication, how you think and listen and learn. So it's a little bit busy time for you. Perhaps there's travel, perhaps there's curiosity, perhaps there's restlessness. And Venus this week is making something called a conjunction to Jupiter. It's a beautiful aspect. It's not to say that every Taurus is going to feel this or even feel it well, but there is an opportunity to plant seeds for new beginnings, particularly new beginnings around home and family, around you, around new endeavors, new horizons, and maybe you have something to say, something to write, something to speak as well. It could be a matter of faith, truth, or even conviction. Then we're coming off of what's called Mars opposite Saturn. Mars is a relationship planet for you. So this is just a quick check-in on how our relationship's doing, Taurus, because Mars opposite Saturn can be a demand for accountability, a demand for commitment, a milestone in a relationship, but it's hasn't been an easy energy. Mars is now in Libra, and Libra is your, I gotta do the math, your sixth sign of health and wellness, work and projects. So it could be something around service to other people and how you are showing up in your day-to-day life. We just had Mercury turn direct in Leo, and for you, that's your sign of home and family, roots, foundation. It is making a bit of a intense opposition to Pluto, which is way up top in your career sector. So there's something that's going on this week about needing to make either different decisions, different choices about home and family. When you see a bit of a back and forth between what's called the 4th and the 10th, it's trying to find the balance between your inner life, your inner needs, your home, your family, but also the duties and responsibilities of your public and professional life. Gemini. Gemini. So Mercury is your planet, and Mercury is now direct in Leo. So you've had Mercury going back and forth in something called your third sign. It kind of adds to this very Gemini quality of needing curiosity, needing travel, exploration, things to do, and maybe you've been a bit on the go or on the move over the past few weeks. Just because Mercury is retrograde doesn't mean that your life has come to a screeching halt. However, it's always the time where there is something that you need to work on, just like any sign in any planet retrograde. It is, Mercury typically and Gemini typically is about taking in information. And Mercury has said, slow down, reflect, trust your intuition, listen to yourself, look at things from a different perspective. The thing is that you have Mercury, which represents you, opposite Pluto, and Pluto is up in something called your ninth sign. So whatever is happening is part of a much bigger story, 20 years in total, which I know is a huge amount of time, but you're in the early stages of this sort of shift. It's going to be different for every Gemini, either shift in what you believe in, what you stand for, your relationship with faith or truth or meaning, your desire to see the world or see the world differently. Pluto is in your ninth. It'll be there for 2 decades. So it's about to opening up your eyes, opening up your world, going beyond yourself, and maybe making choices that allow you to, again, open up. But it's a pretty intense energy that's sort of putting you perhaps a little bit on the defensive. But use Pluto. Pluto in its best facet gives us the ability to see something about ourselves that we typically don't see. And that is part of the magic and the transformation. Cancer. Cancer. So the moon is your planet, and this week it is going from Pisces all the way to Gemini. And so for you, Pisces is something called your ninth sign. It's about faith and truth and meaning and convictions, all the way to Aries in the middle of the week. It's about career. It's about your public life, your public reputation. Going into the end of this week, the Taurus, the moon is in the sign of friends and community, and you close out the weekend, Sunday, starting to go into a very quiet and reflective state where the moon will go into Gemini for you. That said, we just had Mars opposite Saturn. It's a pretty heavy duty aspect for any month, and for you, Mars is a career planet. So this is just a check-in, Cancer, like what's going on with career, what's going on with responsibilities, what's going on with your public life. Because sometimes when Mars is opposite Saturn, there's a push. There could be a push for you to take accountability, for you to really make a change, for you to reach towards a goal or something that you're trying to build. Or sometimes Saturn shows us where something is not working. It hits a boundary, it draws a line. Every Cancer, of course, is going to feel this differently. Mars is now in Libra, which is something called your sign of home and family, roots and foundations. So there might be part of this back and forth that's happening between your public life and let's say the responsibilities that your career entails, or your public life, or your professional life, your duties and responsibilities entail, but also your inner life, your inner world, your home and your family, and how do you find the balance between the two. Mercury has just turned direct. It's turned direct in something called your second sign of money, income, material stability, and security. This has been a period for you to really reflect on your values, whether that's a monetary value, whether that's about a self-worth, or just values in general. Like, what are you investing your time and money in, or even yourself in? And maybe needing to look at things from a very different lens. Mercury opposite Pluto might bring things up. It could be a financial matter, it could be something hidden, but this is something to really get you to reassert your values and what you believe in and what you stand for. Leo, happy birthday, Leo. So I realized we had a couple weeks ago, we had that Leo new moon. So if your birthday was that first few days of Leo season, you had a pretty powerful opposition to Pluto. This is kind of like a bigger conversation, and I've spoken about it from time to time. But Leo, you now have Pluto in your seventh sign of relationships for the coming 2 decades. I know that's a long time, but you're in the early stages of needing to make some big transformations in how you connect, relate, and socialize with people. Everybody, that's the thing about Pluto, it's not a one size fit all planet. It really shows you something about yourself and yourself only. But this new moon puts you into a lunar month that we're still in, that really says on some level, Leo, you need to transform. Something about your life, something about you has to change. That's the thing. Pluto does its work through that. Yes, it demands transformation. We also now have Mercury direct in Leo, also opposing Pluto. So there's something about this week also that talks about how you think, how you listen, how you communicate. And the whole work of the whole work of Mercury retrograde is to have this past 3 weeks to really think things or look at things from a different perspective, not be so sometimes when Mercury is in our sign, we think without we act without listening, we speak without listening. My brain's in retrograde. So that's the retrograde. It gives you a chance to slow down, to consider your thoughts, to consider your choices, and even to consider your actions. And through that, weigh your options, listen to your intuition. But Mercury opposite Pluto is a bit of a heavy-duty aspect where it is either revealing something to you that has been hidden or showing you something about how you think, listen, or learn needs to change. It has to change. We also have Mars opposite Saturn. While that aspect was last week, it is still with us this week. And Mars is your planet of home and family, roots, foundation. And it's opposite Saturn. And so there's something about maybe past and memory that's coming up, and maybe needing to make some different choices again with the choices. But there is also something around this Mars-Saturn opposition about what do you believe in, what do you stand for, and needing to either stand behind some sort of truth or conviction, or needing to really put yourself forward. And maybe there's a lot of uncomfortable conversations right now, but ultimately Pluto is trying to help you to grow and evolve. Virgo. We're coming to the end of your what's called your personal cycle. So the sun is in Leo, and the sun is in something called your 12th sign, so the sign that happens before Virgo. And yes, Mercury has just turned direct, and with Mercury now direct, it's bringing something up that might be, God, I can't think of the word. When Mercury's in the 12th, it really depends on the person. It could be that you're really taking the time to meditate, to reflect, to listen to your intuition, to open up your intuition, to make communication with your spirituality, and even to go beyond your spirituality, to connect with the other side. But Mercury also in the 12th says that this is a time where you've needed to rest. This takes you even back, I think, into July. I can't remember when Mercury turned or went into Leo. But yeah, this is, I think, a good check-in, Virgo. How are you doing? How are you feeling? Have you felt the last few weeks and even going back into earlier July, late June? Have you needed this time to rest and reflect? Has it been a spiritual time for you, or has it been something else? With Mercury now direct, by I think it's September, Mercury will be in Virgo. But in the meantime, Mercury is now direct opposite Pluto. Pluto is trying to show you something. It may show you that in a dream. It could be a vision. It could be something that comes to you. But anytime Pluto is a big part of the astrology, it's helping us to grow and evolve, to see something that we don't typically see about ourselves and maybe is in a blind spot. Whatever is sort of coming to the surface, maybe you need to wait until your birthday season for it to actually really come out, or for you to make some concrete decisions about it. I said this in the introduction. I think it's worth going back and listening, Virgo, is that on the 23rd of August, there's going to be a Virgo new moon. In fact, there will be 2 Virgo new moons in 2025. The second of which is on the 21st of September, will be a solar eclipse. You are a month away from our first eclipse in Pisces. Pisces is your relationship sign. And then we get into later in September, we get into the 21st, we have a solar eclipse in Virgo. So you're like on the cusp of something. And maybe you're already seeing it, maybe you don't see it, but whatever is happening, don't forget that we've already had 2 eclipses in Virgo and Pisces. We had a lunar eclipse in Virgo back on March 14th of 2025. And then we had a lunar eclipse in Pisces back on September 17th, 2024. It's not a new story. It's something that's already with you. It's about you. It's about other people. It's about new beginnings. It's about dynamic new beginnings and maybe needing to head off in new directions. It could be the start of a relationship. It could be a move. It could be the end of a relationship. It will be specific for your life. But it's for you to begin to observe and listen how that sort of next wave of change is going to be moving through your life. And maybe that's where the Mercury opposite Pluto comes in. It's trying to show you what needs to be cleared in advance, because Pluto also helps us to clear and to release. The new moon on the 23rd, which we'll talk more next week, is square Uranus. And that's why, like, I have my sort of astrologer pencil around it, because we have not had yet a new or full moon that directly connects to Uranus and Gemini. Uranus has not been in Gemini since the 1940s. It's been 80 years, and it went into Gemini for the first time on July 7th. So this is a new time for Virgo, particularly in career, but this will affect different aspects of your life. And it could be career, it could be your sense of duty and responsibility, it could be your public life. We'd have to see. But you're on the cusp of something, and listen to yourself, maybe reflect, maybe rest, and that maybe, again, that's part of what that rest was for, was in advance of all these astrological changes in September. Libra. So Venus is your planet, and Venus is over in Cancer. Such a really nice sign for Venus to be in. And right now, it's actually about your career. It's about your public life, your public reputation. It's about your duties and responsibilities. And Venus is joining up with Jupiter this week. So all year long, and this is from June of 2025 until I think June or July of 2026, you have Jupiter in your career sign. Now, I'm not the astrologer that likes to overpromise Jupiter, but typically wherever Jupiter is, that area of our life works out a little bit more easy than, say, Saturn being in a career sign. But with Jupiter here, you have to go for it. It can make you feel more ambitious. It can make you have a greater vision for what you want in the world, and maybe you want more out of your professional life. And so this is a good week to plant seeds. Seeds about the things that you want to change in your career or your professional life, the new directions that you want to go. Maybe Venus and Jupiter is helping you to get recognition for something that you've been working on, for example. It'll be specific for your own life. That said, Libra, you now have, as of August 6th, you have Mars in Libra. So this is taking you off of the last 6 weeks where Mars was in your 12th sign that took you behind the scenes to rest, to go within. So how are you feeling Mars in the last few days? Because typically when Mars is in our sign or in our rising sign, we're ready to go. Mars is about action, taking the lead, moving forward. It's about what you want and perhaps not always compromising. There are times where Libra has a great ability to compromise and negotiate. It's one of your superpowers, but we can't always compromise and negotiate everything. And Libra, this is a time for you to get in touch with your wants, your needs, your desires, and sometimes, and not have to worry about other people. That said, Mars is opposite Saturn. It's a little bit of a heavy duty influence as you ended last week, as you start this week, because it really puts something into reality. You need to make a decision, you need to make a commitment, you need to stand up into something, you need to go after what you want, but there might be a stress point between you and another person. Also, with Saturn in your relationship sign of Aries, June, July, and August of 2025, this is a time for relationship milestones. It could be a marriage, it could be two people moving in together, it could be the start of a relationship, it could be the birth of a baby. You have to see what this milestones in your life. But in general, with a lot of the Saturn influence right now, life is a bit capital L life for Libra. I know I've been saying that the past couple of years. You also had eclipses, but this is just a really big week for you, and this is setting you up, I think, for Libra season and your birthday season. We no longer have eclipses in Libra Aries like we did in 2023 and 4 and into beginning of 5. But I think with Mars touching on the eclipse degree from March 29th of this year, look to see if something from earlier this year, March or April, is really coming back into the forefront right now. Scorpio. So Mars is your planet, and Mars is in a little bit of a tight spot right now with Saturn. So how are you feeling, Scorpio? Even though I love Saturn, Saturn is still Saturn, and classically speaking, Mars opposite Saturn can be a bit of a heavy-duty influence. As of August 6th, your planet Mars is in Libra, your 12th sign. If you were to look at your personal astrology, it's many things, but one of those things is that it's a clock. And Mars is the dominant hand for you as a Scorpio, because Mars is your planet. And since August 6th, it's been pulling your energy towards the 12th sign. It's like the hand on the clock is pointing towards spirituality, faith, truth, meaning, but the inner search for faith, the inner search for truth and meaning. Classically speaking, Mars is not at home in Libra, nor is it at home in your 12th, because it's a time where you're a little bit more lower energy. So I would just say throughout August, the rest of August, and into the first few weeks of September, it's not a time to push. It's not a time to go beyond your limits. It's a time to rest. It's a time to reflect. For those who have a really strong spiritual leaning, you can really use the Mars, because Mars is the action of the chart, to put that action towards your spirituality. Mars opposite Saturn is sort of setting some checkpoints for you. It could be about health and wellness. It could be about faith. It could be about your spirituality. But Saturn is typically pretty black and white. Some things either working or not working. And if it's working, we're getting a pat on the back, for example. We always need to show our hard work to Saturn, because that's how we really build and construct our lives. So you're gonna feel that this week, especially Tuesday and Wednesday when we have an Aries moon. And when Saturn is really the top line in our astrology, it's to show up on time, it's to be true to your word, it's to be the leader, to be the authority, to hold yourself accountable, because the Saturn will tell us if we're not being accountable, for example. We also just had Mercury turn direct in Leo. Leo is a career sign for you, so it's not to say the past 3 weeks have not, sort of pulled away from your career, but it's been a time to look at things from a different perspective, maybe to go back to things from the past, to reorder things, make different choices. And with Mercury opposite Pluto, it's putting you kind of in a little bit of a back and forth between the necessities of home and family and roots and foundation, but also the necessities of your public and professional life. Sagittarius, Jupiter is your planet, and it's still in Cancer. So it is a time from June of 2025 until about June, July of 2026, where Jupiter is taking you through something called your 8th sign. This is a time for you to go within. It's like the dominant time in your personal astrology. It's about intimacy, vulnerability, trust, power, control. I know, great things. Also, this time to really nourish your deepest self, because Jupiter gives you the bravery and courage to go into the deepest parts of yourself. But that's where you get to reveal something about you. I think on some level we all need bravery and courage to go through the eighth, but that's where the real magic and alchemy of our lives happen. For some Sagittariuses, this is about money and finance and assets and wealth and debt and taxes, and maybe you're trying to sort out some financial things as well. You have Venus also in your eighth room right now, and so Venus and Jupiter together, these are what are called, classically speaking, the two benefics. And so maybe the eighth is a space where things are working out. You have resources. You feel like you have support. You're going through a difficult time, and there's somebody that you can lean on, for example. You can talk to somebody, for example. But it does talk about the alchemy of change, transformation, and to really plant seeds that will continue to grow and to continue to support you, whether they are financial or emotional, into 2026. Then there's Mars opposite Saturn, which is not, Mars is not a big player in your astrology, but it is a big aspect in general. It's going back and forth between your, what's called your fifth, which is where Saturn is. This is a time, not where Saturn is. Yes, this is a time for you to take yourself and take your talent seriously, but also Mars is in your 11th sign of friends, community, groups, foundations. So this is a time that's really a back and forth between the self and identity and who you are, but also, your relationship with your friends, your community, and maybe there's a bit of a tense point right now. You also have Mercury, which is a big player in your astrology, now direct, and it's opposite Pluto. So Mercury is a career planet for you, and it's a relationship planet for you. And its opposition to Pluto, I gotta remember where Pluto is. Its opposition to Pluto might put your professional life or relationship in a little bit of an uncomfortable place, where you need to get very clear about your truth, your convictions. Maybe something is being revealed, something's coming to light, or maybe it's time for you to really share something, and something that you would typically hold private. Pluto always demands transformation. So this is a week, and even last week, but this is a week where something is being demanded from you to change. It could be about your goals, your ambitions. It could be how you show up. It could even be about a relationship. But it's a little bit of an intense energy all week long, if I'm being completely honest. And just use it, especially with Jupiter in the 8th, to have the courage and bravery to go into those intimate spaces within yourself so that you can make that change. Capricorn. So Saturn is your planet, and Saturn is still in Aries, and at least until September 1st. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. June and July and August are the preview of a new time in your life, a time that you will return to starting in February of 2026, and this will take you into the beginning of 2028. If Saturn represents you, Saturn also represents our priorities. And your priorities over the next couple of years are about home and family. Whether you are setting up a home, whether you are putting down roots, or you need to take care of a parent, or you are thinking about becoming a parent, that's where a lot of the energy and action of the chart is going to be. We also just had Mars opposite Pluto. Mars is now in Libra, something called your 10th sign of career, your public life, your public reputation. And Mars is in a bit of a sticky spot since August 6th, because it's like more is being asked of you. And it's a time, I think, whenever Saturn is big in the mix, and I realize you're a Capricorn, it's like you always need to be accountable. You need to hold yourself up to a higher standard. But if Saturn is our long-term priorities, Mars is our short-term priorities. And your priority into September 22nd is your professional life. It could be really like a lot of work, a lot of projects, a lot of stuff happening in your public life into the third week of September. But it's a bit of a tight spot this week. I would even add Mercury now direct. Although Mercury is not a major player in your astrology, it's now direct, but it's opposite Pluto. For you, Mercury is in something called your 8th sign. So something secret might need to come to light. Maybe you need to talk about something that's normally private. Maybe conversations are pretty intense. It could be something that's intimate or vulnerable. It could be something even psychological. But it's through the revealing of something that something can come to light, and that's where the transformation happens. Aquarius. So Saturn is your planet, and Saturn is in your your third sign of voice, communication, how you think and listen and learn. And from June, July, and August, you're getting the preview of a new time in your life. Saturn, even though it rules you, wherever Saturn is, that area is our priority. It's our long-term priority. And for Aquarius, and of course this is going to be different for different Aquarians or Aquarius risings, the next coming few years are really either about a writing project, starting writing something, taking more classes, taking your voice seriously, teaching something. Maybe it's about serious travel. But in general, Saturn is about having the maturity and the responsibility to make the right choices. And maybe you're doing a lot of weighing your options and it's not quite clear which way to go. But like I said, June and July and August are really your first preview or your first pass of something that's going to really come into play 2026 and 2027 and the beginning of 2028. Your planet will switch signs on September 1st. It goes back to Pisces. We'll talk about that next week. But we just had Mars opposite Saturn. Mars is something called your career planet. And I know Saturn represents you, but it's kind of putting you in a little bit of a crunch spot last week, this week. See what's coming up in your life. Typically when we have a strong Saturn aspect with Mars, more is being asked of us. Things are coming on our radar, so to speak, that demand to be a priority. It could be a health matter, it could be a professional matter. You need to sort of see what is going on in your life. That said, we just had Mercury turn direct. It turned direct in your relationship sign. It's opposite Pluto in Aquarius. Hey, you're an Aquarius rising. So this might be a time about conversations, really deep conversations with a partner, something that reveals something, but it's through that honesty. I think I made up a word 2 seconds ago. Honesty. That something is really revealed, and that's where the transformation can happen. Pisces. So Jupiter is your planet, and Jupiter right now is in Cancer, something called your 5th sign. Self, creativity, talents, gifts, and abilities. It's a place where Jupiter feels right at home. So really check in with you, Pisces. Like, do you feel a little bit of a vibe shift the past couple of months? Because quite honestly, it's been intense the past couple of years. You had Saturn in Pisces, you had Jupiter square Saturn. So you're getting your first glimpses of something new in your life. Now, Saturn will return to Pisces on September 1st, just to sort of wrap up the transit. But also this week in particular, Venus and Jupiter come together in something called your 5th sign. If you are creative, if you have talents and gifts and abilities, even if they seem quite mundane, then use this time to really get in touch with your creativity. I think anytime 2 planets come together in what's called a conjunction, a seed is planted, and maybe we don't always see right away what that seed is growing, but this in general is a time for you to come back to yourself, Pisces, for you to get back in touch with things that fill you up and give you joy and stoke your passion, because these are the things that help to animate our lives and even to animate ourselves. There could even be some questions about identity, who are you, and making sure you're really prioritizing the things that light you up and give you joy. We just had Mercury turn direct. It turned direct in something called your 6th sign. If there's been an issue at work or a project or with a colleague or even with a pet, maybe now you're starting to get a little bit more resolution. But this is something that's about not just health, but it could be about wellness, it could be about service, it could even be about spirituality. Because for the next 2 decades, yes, you heard me correctly, Pluto is now in your 12th sign. the real work of transformation is happening in the 12th, which is a space that's not of this physical plane. So this is a time that's really asking you to go and to pull back the veil, to open up your intuition, to cultivate your spirituality. And that is perhaps coming up maybe a little bit with this Mercury now direct. We did have Mars opposite of Saturn. Mars is now in Libra. Libra is your, shoot, I gotta do the math, your, yep, it is your 8th sign. So there is some back and forth this week about money and income. It could be security, it could be stability, but this is for you to really maybe see things for as they are, make some decisions, make some financial decisions, and also to get into these bigger themes about value and worth, and particularly taking yourself and taking your self-worth seriously. So there you go. That's your look at the astrology of August 11th through 17th. I'm so glad I got the sound, hit the mic button. 2025, and yes, I'm back, and well, I'm sure I'll be even more in full swing next week. So you can sign up for my newsletter so you never miss anything about if I'm going to be away. It's on my website, empoweringastrology.com. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Spotify, I'm on YouTube. And of course, as always, you can book a consultation with me so we can go more deeply into what this means for your astrology. I love talking to people about their astrology. It is your map. It is one of the most important things that you have access to, because it really maps out the life. It doesn't give you the answers, but it helps you to at least understand the space of your life. So you can book that consultation with me, empoweringastrology.com. In the meantime, I will see you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.